Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us here today. Good evening. It's truly an honor to see as many esteemed individuals gathering here today for a cause that demands our immediate attention. Now, today marks a significant occasion as we gather for the culmination event of the VIRAM Agenda Sustainability Campaign, a collaboration effort by the Mobius Foundation in partnership with India Today Group. Let's extend a very warm welcome to our distinguished guests who are present here, our guest of honor, Dr. Sudhanshu Trivedi and Mr. Pradeep Burman. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Thank you very much, all of you, for staying with us on this very interesting chat. Mr. Burman, as the chairman of Mobius Foundation, what really inspired you to initiate such a comprehensive sustainability campaign?
Well, I want to first of all welcome you all here and want to congratulate India Today on their long-running campaign for VIRAM, which is essentially population sustainability. Now, what does population sustainability mean and how did it come about? The first inspiration for all this was when I was in the United States and I read Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. After that, in 2006, this was 1962 when I was in the States. Next to come was, in 2006, The Inconvenient Truth, which brought out scientifically what the carbon emissions were doing. But that went on from 2006, that brought the general public into the noon. So I decided that I should do something about it. And I wanted to link, which nobody else has done, to link the population with sustainability. The effect that the Inconvenient Truth had, that was audiovisual. And then this VIRAM is also audiovisual. And that was the inspiration to work on sustainability. Is the first thing is the population, besides many of the other things that are there, like renewable energy, agriculture, etc. So that was the first inspiration for me to do something about population.
That's fantastic. Syed, if I could bring you in on this.
बहुत धन्यवाद नबीला। डॉक्टर त्रिवेदी, तीन चीज़ें हमारे मन में थी डॉक्टर त्रिवेदी यहाँ पर। पहली ये कि जनसंख्या बढ़ रही है हमारे देश में, लेकिन वो बहुत असंतुलित तरीके से बढ़ रही है। दूसरा ये है कि क्लाइमेट चेंज, आजकल हम बहुत बात करते हैं, पर्यावरण को नुकसान हमारा हो रहा है। और तीसरा रिसोर्सेज, जो आपने अपने पूर्व के संबोधन में संसाधनों का उल्लेख किया था, तो रिसोर्सेज, संसाधनों का दोहन जिस तरह से हो रहा है, आपको लगता है हमारी सरकार की कुछ ऐसी नीतियां हैं, भारत सरकार की, जो इन तीनों को कहीं ना कहीं दृष्टि में रखे हुए है, कंट्रोल कर रहे हैं?
देखिए, जनसंख्या नियंत्रण में सबसे पहले ज़रूरी है अवेयरनेस एंड एजुकेशन। तो फर्स्ट एम्फेसिस गवर्नमेंट का इस बात पे था कि अवेयरनेस और एजुकेशन आए। दूसरा, अब एट प्रेजेंट जो पॉपुलेशन है, इसको तो आप डू अवे नहीं कर सकते विद इन वन जनरेशन और सो। तो आप देखिए, द मोमेंट वी केम इन द पावर, अब अगर डेवलप कंट्री बनने का टारगेट रखना तो फर्स्ट एंड फॉरमोस्ट रिक्वायरमेंट इज पावर, इलेक्ट्रिसिटी। तो 2014 में हमारा 50 to 60% जो पावर जनरेशन था कोल से आता था। अब अगर कोल के बेस के ऊपर हम वो टारगेट अचीव करने का प्रयास करेंगे तो इन्वायरमेंटल हैजार्ड कितना होगा। तो इसलिए सबसे पहले सोलर के ऊपर एम्फेसिस किया गया और सोलर पे एम्फेसिस करने एलईडी पे लाए गए ताकि कंजम्पशन कम हो। 37 करोड़ हमने एलईडी के बल्ब्स जो थे डिस्ट्रीब्यूट किए, जो अमेरिका की पॉपुलेशन के बराबर है। अब देखिए सोलर में क्या किया गया, ये किसी ने सोचा होगा, सोलर में 25 गुना हमने जनरेशन किया। गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने टारगेट रखा कि बाई 2030 40% our installed capacity of power should be from green energy. But to everybody's surprise, that 40% target was achieved in 2022. Now the revised target for 2030 is 50%. बस इस पॉइंट को ध्यान रखिए कि सूर्य और प्रकृति का महत्व हमें समझना होगा। बस एक अंतर यूं समझिए, दोनों में फंडामेंटल डिफरेंस क्या है। अब हम लोगों के जन्म से पहले की बात है, पर किताबों में पढ़ा, व्हेन यूरी गैगरिन वेंट टू स्पेस, तो क्या कहा गया, मैन हैज कॉन्कर्ड स्पेस, एज इफ स्पेस इज एन एनिमी नीडेड टू बी कॉन्कर्ड। यहां से सारी क्राइसिस शुरू हुई, क्योंकि कुछ भी कह दे, वो साइंटिफिक थिंकिंग नहीं थी, वो थियोलॉजिकल थिंकिंग थी जो कल्चर से मिली थी। हमारी थिंकिंग क्या कहती है, ऋग्वेद में लिखा, मातः भूमि पुत्रो अहम पृथिव्या, धरती हमारी माता, मैं उसका पुत्र हूं, तो माता से व्यक्ति सिर्फ पोषण ले सकता है, शोषण का सोच ही नहीं सकता है। वहां कहते हैं मैन शुड बी एबल टू सबड्यू नेचर, एलिमेंट्स ऑफ द नेचर आर फॉर सर्विस ऑफ यू। इसलिए फंडामेंटल डिफरेंस की वजह से सारी क्राइसिस आई है। तो मैंने सिर्फ ये कहा सोसाइटी को लेके उनका कॉन्सेप्ट अलग है और नेचर को लेके कॉन्सेप्ट अलग है, एंड दैट कॉन्सेप्ट लेड टू ऑल सॉर्ट ऑफ क्राइसिस इन द वर्ल्ड टुडे।
In the face of global climate crisis, we're presented with really an undeniable truth to address this need, interconnected challenges of climate action, sustainability, and population dynamics. And our discussions today surround balancing the global equation, the importance of population stabilization. I'm going to call upon our panelists here. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining me here on stage. My quick question would be to Mr. Kiran Karnik. Sir, how do you perceive the current global demographic landscape at this point? What role do you believe overpopulation really plays in exacerbating existing societal challenges?
Well, I think the Earth is straining under the overall population that we have of 8 billion, and resources are getting scarce, particularly as prosperity increases and consumption increases. We can't go on doing this forever. The good news, though, is that around the world, so many countries have now reached points of stabilization as we have in India. In India, and I need to mention this, it was mentioned the earlier thing, to reiterate, we are now the biggest country. We'll continue to grow and should stabilize at an overall population of maybe 1.6 billion by 2047, 2050. After that, we start decreasing.
Yeah.
And by 2100, we'll be at 1 billion, which is what we were in year 2000. So we are 100 years and we'll be back to where we are. Now this is happening slower in some countries than in others. And the challenges, the big challenge is that in the meantime, how do we husband our resources and how do we make sure that in doing that, we don't ruin things like the climate. The climate change problems are serious and we've got to look at that. As also ruining our own environment by waste and industrial pollution, traffic and all this. And I think that's the big challenge, that in these few years before we begin to learn more and stabilize the population, how do we ensure that our consumption, our lifestyle, our culture is such that we don't make life difficult for ourselves? It's selfish, self-interest.
Very well said. Mr. Praveen Garg, you know, with your extensive experience in various administrative roles, government roles, how do you really perceive the current global demographic challenges here, particularly in relation to overpopulation, its implications in sustainable development?
With my different roles within the government and starting as a district magistrate, smaller places, I think the population, we have been addressing this issue of population growth since 1950s and 80s also. And we know that what happened in the 75 and then it went on a back burner. So it's alarming, I would say. The rise in population, increasing population is alarming. And for India especially, it's an alarming situation. You know, we used to promote a lot of investment in the country by saying that we have a demographic dividend. But my take is it's no longer a demographic dividend. It is becoming a disaster. Now the reason is why. Because the quality of education is not there, or it's poor to the masses. Then the skill development is not there. Skills are not there. People are there, but they are not employable. If you take interview to hire people, you don't find people to be hired. So these are the issues which have to be addressed. So unless we address these issues right now, it's going to be a great problem. It's going to be an alarming situation and little disaster, and which may result in social conflicts as well. Because there will be shortage of food grains, there will be shortage, and you know, we need to maintain a living standard of living. There has to be certain nutrition which has to be taken by a newborn.
True.
And it's an injustice also. You see, a newborn in a poor family doesn't get good education, nutrition, health services. So that's why if you see the HDR, Human Development Index, for Human Development Report, which measures the Human Development Index, which is education, health, and income, India is ranked 140 out of 190 countries. So it's alarming, so we need to address it.
Ms. Poonam Mutreja, ma'am, you know, with your extensive experience when it comes to advocating for women's rights, reproductive rights, rural livelihood, how do you really perceive the role of gender equality in addressing challenges that are posed by overpopulation?
So first of all, we have to see population as not just a woman's responsibility of family planning. Family planning, the burden of having, practicing family planning without having much agency. There is a shortage of services for family planning, especially in the most remote and backward areas. So apart from the achievement of having a child, without resources, a woman has to take the burden of family planning. And second, it is just as much a men's issue, it's a societal issue.
Absolutely.
It's an issue of gender justice. And in Population Foundation, where we've been working for 50 years on this issue, one of our slogans is, Desh badlega jab mard badlega. India cannot become Viksit Bharat without participation of women in the labor force, and they will participate in the labor force if men start sharing the burden at home. It's across the world, 95% women had to give up working temporarily or long term because of the burden of caregiving, childbearing, and caring for the elderly. We have to talk about gender justice, and when I talk about gender justice, women have the right to decide if they want children, if they want to get married, when they want to get married, and how many children they'll have. Instead of saying population is a problem, I really deeply care about what the Mobius Foundation is doing, and so does Population Foundation do. And education, the last thing I want to say, education was said to be a very good contraceptive pill, but they should have decision making even without education. But in the meantime, what we can do is access to family planning services, access to reproductive services, increasing age at marriage, so women can have opportunities to join the economy.
Right.
Especially in urban India, cities like Delhi, Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata, Bangalore, Pune, our garbage mountains are growing taller. There's no one freshwater body where you and I can actually go drink water from today. Forget drinking water from, we can't even swim in these water bodies. Even our celebrations in these water bodies are amidst froth, right? Our consumption patterns have rocketed to the extent that it's beyond sustainable.
True.
Whatever's been done, for it to be undone, maybe we'll need another 3 decades. That's where we've reached, right? And we are only proposing solutions which are becoming problems for the future. Our solutions of today are not an answer to problems of yesterday, but they're actually the seed for futuristic problems. Population and the consumption patterns, all of these are interlinked. And then take into example the number of dengue cases, the number of cancer cases because of carcinogens that are constantly being pumped into our body system through everything that we consume, or the poor air quality, the poor water quality, and the sharp decline in wildlife population. Whether it's we are celebrating the leopard population, which is gone up in India, but take into example man-animal conflict. With increasing human population, with reducing forest cover, with expressways that are going to go through many green jungle pockets, and with some kind of diluted environmental laws where forests are today going to be opened up for minerals, which is again for human consumption, it's all a vicious cycle. Right? And somewhere if we draw the line understanding that this is exactly what we need, we're a value-based, ethos-based system, a community which was taught how to worship the tree to snake to water to wind to fire to every aspect of nature. Somewhere we've forgotten that. We're just reproducing at an alarming rate, and there needs to be larger educational awareness with regards to population literacy and consumption patterns.
going back to Mr. Karnik. As the former president of NASSCOM, you really spearheaded initiatives to support small and medium enterprises, SMEs. How can similar initiatives at this point be taken to ensure a curb in such overutilization of our resources?
Well, I look at it from two different angles. The first is literally the question you asked about SMEs and industry. And to me, it seems that there's a great deal of scope because the number of SMEs are literally in millions. And if we can bring about greater efficiency in terms of how they use material, what materials they use, how much pollution they cause, what is their carbon footprint, I think it will make a big difference. They don't have the money to make the investments that may be required, so one will have to work out clever financing ways of doing it. And I think that's a very important task which bigger companies could do and help, and certainly foundations and NGOs could do to bring to their attention the kinds of things that can help them, which will help their business too, because
Right.
less waste, better profits. The second answer to your question is to take the analogy further, that just as we look at SMEs and see what can we do for them, can we look at communities and see how can these communities participate and make sure that the whole issue related to overuse of materials, pollution, and the problems that follow is taken care of. And I think there we have a lot of things to go to make sure that communities are empowered. Poonam just mentioned empowerment key, empowerment of women, because that's one of the most critical elements if you want the population to be not just stable, but healthy, happy, and doing well. In a similar way, we need to empower communities. And to me, the critical part is that, we've talked of population and numbers. One big problem is concentrations of population, not just overall population, but concentrations as in urban areas. The concentrations are a problem, and one answer to that is to begin to decentralize our economic activity. And today, technology enables you to do that. So can we look at it from the point of view of what do we do to decentralize and devolve, not centralize and control?
Mr. Garg, a quick word and an advice from you on how could we really help sustainability through population control?
I think, you see, the most required initiative or the step required is education, and especially in the rural areas. I'm not talking of, there's a divide. If you take the urban education and the rural education, there's a divide. The teacher in the rural areas doesn't come. Absenteeism is a big issue. So the education of the girl child is a major thing which needs to be done, especially in the government schools, in the schools which are for the underprivileged. For that matter, Delhi has done a good thing by modernizing the government schools.
Yeah.
So girl education is the key. And if the girls are educated, they will be empowered, they would become employable. And for that, Mobius Foundation has taken initiative. Recently, we have started, as Mr. Burman was also mentioning in the initial speech, that we have a 100-school program for the girl child. We have 50 schools on UP side and 50 schools on Madhya Pradesh side. So this is the thing which is required, that the girls are educated, because then they are able to decide when to marry, when to not to get married early, when to have children, and if they can be employed after some vocational training or some training or education. And for certain categories of society, they get reservation in a lot of things, a lot of scholarships are there, which these girls are not aware of. So that is I think the most critical, if I have to point out one. There are a number of initiatives which are required to be done, but this is, so here I'll agree with Dr. Poonam Mutreja that gender diversity or the gender empowerment is a must.
I think Ms. Poonam will elucidate on women being more sincere on helping population control. And more importantly, Ms. Poonam, how can partnerships between public and private sectors really leverage in terms of improvising access to family planning, services, contraceptives, particularly in the underserved communities?
We have to make up, I want to add, for the sins of the past. for so many years, we've had a family planning program since 1950. We still don't have the choice or access to contraceptives even today that the most marginalized and a very large percentage of women. 10% of fertility is still totally unwanted in India, apart from 16 million abortions per year, which are a proxy for contraception. So we really have to look at it seriously from the women's point of view.
Yeah.
Also women's choice, what I talked about reproductive justice earlier. So we need a really good public-private partnership, but understanding the data and what needs to be done. Only one corporate sector funds family planning with their CSR responsibility, only one, and that is Mobius.
Right. A final word from Arun there. Arun, how do you really champion the youth to be more committed to ensuring population control and, of course, less consumption, stabilizing the environment through that?
We have way too many desktop conservationists. We have very few field workers, right? We are not climate adaptive in any ways because we as a generation have actually had more sophistication in life compared to the past. Whether it's air conditioning, purified water, food at the push of a button, all of this is something which we've been exposed to and which we may not be able to live without. And that might become the huge crisis in the next 10 years if all of this stops being there, right? That's point one. Today, more than opinion, there is propaganda in any front, right? That is a huge threat. Whether it's greenwashing, whether it's corporate blaming, whether it's utilization. I've seen people talk about coal industry, sitting in a hall which is powered by coal, right? Now, this kind of human hypocrisy needs to be neutralized, and we have to come to logic-based, science-based approach where we understand that each of us is contributing. I'll give you an example. We go to a school, do massive orientation program. I'm explaining to them about Anthropocene. Then I tell them there was Ice Age, there was Stone Age. Do you know what age we belong to? A 4th standard boy raises his hand, stands up and says, garbage. Yes? Because that's exactly where we have come.
The youth are the agents of change, and I think we've really discussed almost every level on sustainability, population control. Really appreciate all of you and your views there. Thank you very much.